Welcome back to Vintage Disney here on Brian's Things That Are Cool. When I look back on my earliest videos, I've run into a couple that I felt needed to be reworked. These are on topics that I care a lot about, and I just figured that they needed a fresh coat of paint. So let's start off with my look at Mark Twain and Disney. Like the great Samuel Clemens himself, Walt Disney grew up in Missouri. The Disney family had moved from Chicago to Marceline, Missouri when Walt was 4, and as a boy he felt a strong connection to Twain's stories. This fandom continued into his adult life and would influence his work in films, television, and even theme park attractions. In fact, a year after Disneyland began operating, Walt built Tom Sawyer Island at the park, which opened on June 16, 1956. In its planning stages, designer Mark Davis worked for hours to please his demanding boss, painstakingly working out the contours of Tom Sawyer Island, but it still came up short in Walt's eyes. In frustration, Walt said, "Give me that thing," and went home and worked on the blueprint for hours in the Red Barn workshop in his backyard. The next morning, he put his design down on Mark Davis's desk and said, "Now that's the way it should be." The island was built by Walt's design. This was for his hero Mark Twain after all, so it had to be perfect. Walt even hired his own Tom Sawyer to greet guests on the island. 12-year-old Tom Nabby was already a fixture at Disneyland, having landed a job as a newsie on Main Street, hawking the Disneyland news to Main Street guests when Walt began seeing a lot of Tom Sawyer in the boy, and asked him to play the character on the island. Walt's only condition was that he keep at least a C average in school, and Tom would have to bring his report cards with him for Walt to inspect. Tom Nabby would stay with the Disney Company after outgrowing his famous role, meeting his wife at the park, who was working one of the concession stands, and he was eventually transferred over to Walt Disney World in Orlando, Florida, where he managed the monorail and later distribution services before retiring in 2003. A true Disney legend. The original Disneyland Tom Sawyer Island would see a retheming in 2007 with Pirate's Lair on Tom Sawyer Island. This was meant to capitalize on the success of the Pirates of the Caribbean film series, while also offering another connection to Twain's book, in which Tom, Huck, and Joe Harper go off to play pirates on a nearby island. Tom Sawyer Island was built in Tokyo Disney and Walt Disney World. Unfortunately, in recent years, Walt Disney World has decided to destroy Tom Sawyer Island and its surrounding area to make way for a Pixar Cars attraction. I guess I'll always have my memories of running around Tom Sawyer Island and taking the steamboat or on Rivers of America. I'm gonna miss it. Luckily, over in Epcot at Walt Disney World, you can still get your Mark Twain fix in The American Adventure, which opened on October 1st, 1982. Here we get to meet an animatronic Mark Twain and Ben Franklin as they discuss the American experience.
Well, Mr. Twain, what do you think of our America now?
I think the Founding Fathers never dreamed of an America like this.
Of course not. We weren't dreamers. We were visionaries. That is why our Constitution withstands the rigors of time.
In 1962, Walt will produce the company's first adaptation of a Mark Twain novel, The Prince and the Pauper, which starred Sean Scully and TV's Zorro, Guy Williams, as Miles Hendon, a role fellow swashbuckler Errol Flynn had played in 1937. Walt had taken a liking to Guy Williams while making Zorro, and during a long financial dispute between Disney and the network over ownership of Zorro, Guy Williams was kept on full salary, with Prince and the Pauper being one of the productions made during this period. After Walt's death in 1966, his love for Mark Twain lived on. 1979 brought a loose adaptation of A Connecticut Yankee in King Arthur's Court called The Unidentified Flying Oddball, in which an astronaut finds himself transported to Camelot. Probably the only Disney movie I can think of that has a character reading a Playboy magazine. 1990 would see a well-done reimagining of Twain's most popular characters, Tom Sawyer and Huck Finn, called Back to Hannibal, where we meet grown-up versions of the characters as they try to solve a murder mystery. The same year, Disney took another stab at Prince and the Pauper, this time in animated form with Mickey and Friends, much in the vein of their adaptation of A Christmas Carol. Disney would give Prince and the Pauper a third try in 2007 with a modern Twain story, The Prince and the Pauper, starring the Sprouse twins, which I haven't seen. Then in 1991, Jason Robards would star in a biopic of Twain himself called Mark Twain and Me, based on the memoirs of a young fan named Dorothy Quick, who befriended Twain in his final years. 1993 had Thomas Ian Nichols from Rookie of the Year don his Little League uniform again for another adaptation of A Connecticut Yankee in King Arthur's Court, A Kid in King Arthur's Court, which is notable mostly for being early roles for both Kate Winslet and Daniel Craig. Star Thomas Ian Nichols would go on to play Walt himself in 2015's Walt Before Mickey. With all these theme park attractions and film adaptations, it seemed only natural that Disney would finally get around to adapting Twain's most memorable characters, The Adventures of Huck Finn in 1993 and Tom and Huck in 1995. So slip on an old straw hat and jump on a log raft down the mighty Mississippi. Let's check them out. Tom and Huck was released on December 22nd, 1995, and follows Mark Twain's 1876 novel, The Adventures of Tom Sawyer, a book Mark Twain loosely based on his own childhood. Home Improvement's Jonathan Taylor Thomas stars as Tom, a mischievous kid who always seems to find himself in trouble. After befriending a drifter-type kid named Huck, played by the late Brad Renfro, they accidentally witness the murder of Dr. Jonas Robinson by town criminal Injun Joe, played by Eric Schweig. When the town drunk Muff Potter, played by Mike McShane, is framed for the murder, Tom has to choose between keeping the oath he made with Huck to stay quiet about the murder and saving Muff from the hangman's noose. Tom and Huck is one of the closest book-to-film adaptations I've run into. The changes are minor. Some characters see changes to their background, like Sid being Tom's bratty cousin here, while he's Tom's half-brother in the book, and Dr. Robinson being the town undertaker here, instead of being a medical doctor. There are a few scenarios from the book portrayed in the movie that didn't include Huck as they do in the film, but that's understandable given that they're the two most famous characters. Other than that, there are a couple of funny parts of the book that were omitted entirely, like the cat and the painkiller story, but for the most part, it's pretty faithful. Disney didn't shy away from some of the darker aspects of the book, like murder, and still delivers a timeless adventure story with Twain's own brand of Americana fully intact. I don't think Jonathan Taylor Thomas would have been my first choice for Tom, but given that he was the tween idol at the time, I understand the casting choice. Brad Renfro's Huck is a bit darker and tortured than I'm used to seeing the character, but Brad Renfro is known for his bad boy image, so I can understand that too. Both of them play well off each other, and are more than acceptable bringing these famous scenes from the novel to life. The supporting cast is strong as well, with plenty of recognizable faces, like Rachel Lee Cook as Betty Thatcher, another character lifted directly from Twain's own recollections of his childhood, Charles Rocket as her father, Judge Thatcher, and I really enjoy Mike McShane as Muff Potter. Usually McShane is called upon to play broadly played, goofy, or dumb characters, but here you do feel something for him as Muff, as he's wrongfully accused with almost no one on his side.
I'm innocent. I didn't do it, I swear. I've done a lot of crazy drunk things in my time, but I never killed anyone. You gotta believe me.
I do, Muff.
You do?
Yep, I do, Muff.
How come?
Well, I know you, Muff.
A more sensitive, modern audience may not like that the film chose to keep the villain's name of Injun Joe, but Eric Schweig is fantastic in the role, creating one terrifying bad guy. The character of Injun Joe himself was based on a man Mark Twain knew as a boy named Joe Douglas, who was supposedly incredibly nice when he was drunk, but mean as a snake when he was sober. Usually it's the other way around. Filming in Alabama was a chore for all involved due to the extreme heat, thunderstorms, tornado warnings, and bugs. Not to mention a particular kind of mulch that made a number of the cast members and crew very sick. One of the standouts of the film was its score by Stephen Edelman. It takes traditional elements of a film score, like a large orchestra, and mixes it with early Americana instrumentation such as fiddles and even a mouth harp. As a fan of traditional country, as well as someone who really enjoys walking through Frontierland in Walt Disney World, it's one of a handful of film scores that I'll find myself listening to quite frequently. Tom and Huck was written by Stephen Sommers, who wrote and directed our next film that we're going to look at, The Adventures of Huck Finn. The Adventures of Huck Finn was released on April 2nd, 1993, and was taken from Mark Twain's 1884 novel, Adventures of Huckleberry Finn, a character based on a boy Mark Twain grew up with named Tom Blankenship. The film adapts the majority of the classic story of a half-illiterate boy named Huckleberry, played by Elijah Wood, who runs away from his abusive father, Pap, played by Ron Perlman, and joins an escaped slave named Jim, played by Courtney Vance, for an adventure down the Mississippi towards the Free States. It's a story that's come under fire in recent times by people who may not fully understand what Mark Twain was trying to say. Twain's book, and the film, deals honestly with the subjects of race relations and slavery, and successfully delivers its message without feeling forced.
Just because you thought something's right, and everybody believes it's right, it don't make it right.
Director Stephen Sommers, who went on to direct the Mummy movies, delivers a beautifully shot film that captures its 19th century Missouri setting with its gorgeous cinematography. Natchez, Mississippi stands in for Hannibal here, and no sound stages were used, so every location is a real place, which really helps bring you into the world, as does the bright, whimsical score by Bill Conti, the man behind the Rocky theme. Of all the Huck Finn adaptations there are, Elijah Wood is one of the best to be cast in the role. He was a child star who had the ability to play every character very naturally, which is rare for a child star, and he really gets that quick-witted kid with an overwhelming feeling of wanderlust. Elijah was originally going to reprise his role as Huck in Tom and Huck, but by the time filming began, Elijah was filming Flipper with Paul Hogan. Given that the events of The Adventures of Tom Sawyer happened before the events of Adventures of Huckleberry Finn, if Elijah Wood did return, he would have been 2 years older in a film set before his own movie. That's Hollywood. In Huck Finn, Elijah also shares a strong chemistry with Courtney Vance as Jim. Jim's character sees two changes from the book that I prefer. Most notably, the film opts to drop Jim's nickname in the book, which includes a rather ugly slur. And while it fits for the time the book is set, it's not missed at all here. The other change I like is that Jim is a lot more intelligent in the movie. As in the book, he's still unable to read, which again fits the time period, but he never feels like a caricature here. Ron Perlman is perfectly cast as Pap Finn, and he's pretty intense for a kid's movie. As of the making of this video, he's the only cast member of the movie I've been able to meet in person. And he even signed my copy of the VHS. Hopefully someday I can meet Curtis Armstrong, who has a great supporting role in the film's last act as Country Jake. I can't say there's one character that feels miscast, to be honest. Some of them, like Robbie Coltrane and Jason Robards as the Carpetbaggers, are so perfect I judge any other portrayal to their standards. My only gripe with the movie is that it's actually only 3/4 of the book. It's a smooth adaptation of the book for the majority of the picture, up until the resolution of the Carpetbaggers storyline. And then an entire chunk of the book, which featured an adventure with Tom Sawyer, gets taken out and the ending is tacked on. It was probably a smart move on the part of Stephen Sommers to cut this out, as the film would have been a little long with it in there. And Tom only had a brief appearance early in the film, not even being named. But I'm a bit of a completionist. And yes, fans of Nickelodeon's Adventures of Pete and Pete, that was Danny Tamborelli playing an unnamed Tom Sawyer there. I vividly remember seeing The Adventures of Huck Finn with a friend at my local theater, which is sadly no longer there. Coincidentally, it's the same theater I saw Tom and Huck in with my mom. Great experiences for sure. Now, Tom and Huck does have a Blu-ray, but I'd love to see Huck Finn get the HD treatment. It's always nice when a movie adaptation is as accurate as possible. Kids watching it now will hopefully get wrapped up in the adventure and be guided towards the book to finish the story.
Now, where did Huckleberry go to?
Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed my look at Mark Twain and Disney. If you'd like to be kept up to date so when I release a new video, go ahead, hit that subscribe button. And if you really want to be notified, hit that bell as well. I'm Brian, and I'll see you next time on Vintage Disney.